Good morning and welcome to Daily Devotions with Pastor Joe. I'm Pastor Joe, and for this morning we're going to be looking into the rest of what it has to say about what happened to Gehazi after the Naaman, the soldier Naaman, was healed of his leprosy by following the advice of Elisha. So back into a little bit about the story of Elisha here. We've got several of them ahead before we reach the end, but this one is kind of important and I wanted to keep it to itself. It's got a lot to learn for us about being humble and about not being greedy as Gehazi was. But Gehazi here was very greedy. 2 Kings 5:15. And right at the beginning, if you like the video, hit the like button. Comment down below if you have anything you want to talk about in relation to this video. Share with a friend. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. You know, all that good stuff. All right. Gehazi, his greed and punishment. 2 Kings 5:15 says, "And he returned to the man of God," Naaman did, "and he and all his company, and came and stood before him, and he said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth, but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. But he said, As the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused." And so right here, actually, right at the beginning, Naaman had a lot of stuff to give. He had a lot of money and a lot of clothing that was sent with him by the king who had sent him to Israel to be healed. He had a lot of things that he was ready, willing, and wanting to gift to Elisha here for this healing. And the king wanted him to have it, but Elisha refused. He said, this is God's work. It's not mine. I'm not going to take a reward for what God has done. I didn't do anything to heal you. Why should I take a reward? So he refused. And it says 17, "And Naaman said, Shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules' burden of earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Lord." So he said, "All right, am I allowed to take some of your dirt?" Out of all of the things that Naaman could ask for at this point, he says, "I want some of your dirt, because I'm going to take your dirt to build an altar, and I'm going to worship your God in my home. And I want some of your dirt." Probably dirt specifically from the side of the river where he'd been healed, mud. He said, "I want to take 2 mules worth of earth," however much they can carry. Verse 18, in this thing the Lord pardon thy servant, that when my master goeth into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leaneth on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, when I bow down myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon thy servant in this thing. And he said unto him, Go in peace. So he departed from him a little way. So he goes a little ways away. He said, pardon me, I know I'm going to have to go and pretend, and that's not something you should do. It's not something that God considers right or just or approvable. But he said, I'm only going to worship God, and I might pretend to serve in this other place when my master is making me go in with him. But, I'm going to serve God. So he's serving God part way here. It's not a full confession. It's not a full deliverance. Verse 19, he said to go in peace. So he departed from him a little way. So he didn't get very far away. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, verse 20, the man of God, said, Behold, my master hath spared Naaman the Syrian, is in not receiving at his hands that which he brought. But as the Lord liveth, I will run after him and take somewhat of him. So Gehazi says, What on earth, Elisha? He brought this stuff specifically to give to you. That's his whole point. And he's not saying this to Elisha, obviously. The Bible never indicates that he says this at all, but more that he's saying it to himself. He said he didn't even charge him anything. If I would have done something like this, I would have taken something. And so he says, as God is alive, as Jehovah, the Lord, is alive, that when it's in all caps like that, you can bet it was originally Jehovah in the original scriptures. So as Jehovah liveth, which means as the everlasting God lives, I will run after him and take somewhat of him. I'm going to get something from him for what was done. After all, Gehazi probably reasoned in his own mind and said, hey, I'm the one who came and gave him the orders. I'm the one who told him what to do. I might as well get something from him. So Gehazi, verse 21, followed after Naaman. So he went quickly. He got out, got his coat on, and went out of the house and ran after Naaman the direction Naaman came. And when Naaman saw him running after him, he lighted down from the chariot to meet him and said, Is all well? Now Naaman is thinking at this point, uh-oh, something happened to Elisha when I left. And verse 22, and he said, all is well, my master hath sent me, which was a double lie. First of all, his master didn't send him. Elisha didn't send Gehazi here. So his greed is leading him not only to take something that was really the Lord's in trying to get a reward for what God had done, but it's also leading him to lie. And then he's saying all is well when obviously things are not well in the heart and soul of Gehazi. He's saying then, behold, even now there be come to me from Mount Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments. And so he lies yet again and says, my master sent me. Elisha did not send him. All is well, but not all is well in the soul of Gehazi. And, 2 young prophets came, sons of the prophets. Give them silver and clothes. And Naaman said, be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags. So that's 2 talents by weight, with 2 changes of garments, and laid them upon 2 of his servants, and they bear them before him. So Gehazi is thinking probably at this point, I don't have much to worry about. I don't even have to carry it most of the way. These guys are taking care of it for me. Verse 24 says, and when he came to the tower, he took them from their hand and bestowed them in the house, and he let the men go, and they departed. So he took the clothes and the money from the men and hid them in the house. Verse 25, but he went in, stood before his master. And Elisha said unto him, whence comest thou, Gehazi? And he said, thy servant went no whither. So yet again he's turning to another lie. Because, if we as humans begin to sin and do something wrong, whether it's stealing especially, giving way to lusts of any kind, those sins lead to other sins, and generally they always lead to false communication, lying. And in this case, it led to lie after lie after lie, discrediting God, discrediting Elisha, doing so many bad things. He said, thy servant went nowhere. I wasn't anywhere, Elisha. You're crazy. Maybe I just didn't hear you. I must have been up in the tower. You might have called for me, but I didn't hear you, Elisha. I've been gone for over 40 minutes, traveling, running all the way out there to Naaman and back. No, Elisha, no. You must be mistaken. I didn't go anywhere. Verse 26 says, and he said unto him, went not mine heart with thee, when the man turned again from his chariot to meet thee? And you can just feel Gehazi's heart drop and start thumping harder in his chest, don't you? Certainly, if you've ever experienced what it's like to be trying to get by with a falsehood, trying to get by with a lie, I have in my past, and if you've ever felt that way, especially when it's an early one of your first lies, you feel that thumping in your chest and like your heart is so heavy it's ready to explode. And probably Gehazi has been perfectly honest to this point. He's been used by Elisha. He's been used by God. He has to have lived all right to this point. He has to be consecrated in some way to following and serving Elisha and God. But in this case now, Elisha, first when he's lying, he's like, yeah, I didn't go anywhere. And then Elisha says, my heart went with you when the man turned from his chariot to meet you. And Gehazi's heart drops to his feet. And he knows, because he says, how could he even know that he had turned from his chariot? And then Elisha says this, is it a time to receive money and to receive garments and olive yards and vineyards and sheep and oxen and men servants and maid servants? And so he says to Gehazi, that was the most inappropriate thing you could have done, Gehazi. This isn't the place and the opportunity and the time where you should be taking money and receiving money from somebody for something you had nothing to do with. You were only a relayer of a message. That's all you did was relay a message for me. You don't deserve this. Is this the time to try to get money and garments and all these other things? Is this really the appropriate time for that, Gehazi? Gehazi has to have been just absolutely knocked out in his spirit. And verse 27 is the most sad thing that we could possibly hear at the end of the story. It says, the leprosy therefore of Naaman shall cleave unto thee and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper, as white as snow. And so it wasn't just a little bit of leprosy. He was completely leprous. His whole body taken by the leprosy. And, of course, that is not the end of Gehazi's life, but it is the end of his life in many respects, because leprosy in Bible days meant completely being rejected from society. It meant completely being apart from everybody. You were an outcast. You were out in the outside of the city and not allowed to be in contact with anybody physically whatsoever. And so here's Naaman, who has been healed because he took the step of faith. And then Gehazi, who took greed, and by choosing greed, ended up losing everything. It says it's to cling to him and his seed forevermore. As long as he has children down the line, they're going to have leprosy crop up. And who knows how long that was, or if it still is. But all of Gehazi's descendants would suffer because of what he had done. And that is terrible. That is horrific to think about. So he went out from his presence as white as a leper, and that doesn't, a leper, white as snow, and that doesn't mean white as in clean and pure. It means white as in impure, unclean, and filled with leprosy. And how awful it is to think that whenever you go into sin, if he's just thinking to himself, I could use some more clothes, I could use some more money, it's not going to hurt, it's just a little thing. And he was going to give it anyway, and he's got lots to give. Make all the excuses in the world. And he goes, and he's not stealing from Naaman, because Naaman was going to give it. He's stealing from God. He just doesn't get the concept that whenever he does this, he's doing something against God. And anytime that you lie, your lying is directly a sin against God. In whatever way it is, you lie to another person, and they are another human being created in the image of God. You are lying to the living God of the universe who created it all. And you kill somebody. You're committing that act of murder against the living God of the universe. You are stealing in action against that living God of the universe. He is holy, he is just, he is righteous, and he does not put up with sin. And so Gehazi in this place, in this particular moment, suffered an awful stroke of destruction against him because of his wicked choice, his wickedness, his sin, that he chose to go take from Naaman and then lose it all. I wonder, if Gehazi would have come to Elisha at some point and said, Elisha, I really could use some more clothes. Mine aren't the greatest. Is there any way we could try to get me some new clothes? I think Elisha would have had pity on him. But in this case, he didn't. He decided to go a different route. And in the same respect, if you go to God and you say, God, I have need, then God's going to have that pity and mercy and grace on you. But if you say, oh, God will excuse it, I have a need, you go out and try to steal, that's not something God's going to excuse. Don't excuse sin, because God won't excuse sin. Don't make an excuse for sin in any instance in your life, because God will not excuse sin ever. All right? All right. Well, once again, this has been a daily devotion with Pastor Joe. I hope you have an excellent day in the Lord, and God be with you till we meet again, my friends. I'll see you later on another daily devotion with Pastor Joe.